Chapter 591. After reaching the completion level of the battle spirit realm, Li Fuchen's body refinement might not be able to increase his strength by another level, but it was able to double Li Fuchen's defense. If Li Fuchen were to fight with Lei Donghai now, Lei Donghai wouldn't be able to injure Li Fuchen. Even a mid-level monarch might not be able to injure Li Fuchen within a short period of time. Junior brother Li, do you plan to continue dual cultivation? Lei Donghai's face was filled with shock. It was already extremely difficult for an ordinary person to walk one path, and there was almost no one who could walk two paths at the same time. Only when a certain path had reached its limit and it was extremely difficult to continue advancing would they choose to advance in another path. Shaking his head, Lei Donghai realized he couldn't understand Li Fuchen anymore. Li Fuchen had already broken his understanding of prodigies. It was not an exaggeration to call him a monster. I wonder who will be the ruler of the Emperor's Sky Continent in 10 or 100 years? Lei Donghai had a trace of anticipation. He was looking forward to how much Li Fuchen would grow after a long period of time. 95%, 97%, 99%. Sword pattern was also a reflection of Sword Dao Law. Therefore, comprehending the Sword Dao Law within the Heaven Stone would allow Li Fuchen to comprehend the Joint Heaven Sword's sword pattern faster. 100%. When Li Fuchen comprehended the sword pattern on the second seal of the Joint Heaven Sword to 100%, the sword spirit that was in a deep slumber woke up. He comprehended the second level of the sword pattern so quickly? Not bad, you are qualified to wield this sword. The sword spirit's voice echoed in Li Fuchen's mind. Senior Sword Spirit. Li Fuchen revealed a smile and said, the Sword Spirit said, since you've already comprehended the second layer of the sword markings, then I'll help you undo the second layer of the seal. Voila! The sound of chains breaking resounded, and in the next moment, a terrifying sword will that could destroy heaven and earth shot into the sky. In front of this sword intent, Li Fuchen seemed to have come to a fragmented world. It seemed that in this world, there was nothing that could stop the Joint Heaven Sword. Lei Donghai and the others who were in seclusion were suddenly awakened. They looked at Li Fuchen's cavern with bewilderment. This sword intent was too strong, so strong that they instinctively felt fear. The sword will pierce through the mountains and shot straight into the sky. A crack instantly appeared in the sky. This crack was like a wound in the sky. In the vicinity of the mountain, 3 primary sea realm monarchs were flying. Damned beast! How cunning! It actually hid underground. The leader of the mid-level monarchs said gloomily. The 3 of them had chased after a rare Class 7 low-tier demonic beast, thinking that they could make a small profit. Who would have thought that in the end, the cooked duck would fly away, and all their efforts would be in vain? Big brother, look! One of the low-level monarchs with a mustache pointed at the sky and suddenly said, I saw it. The mid-level monarch's eyes burst out with passion. Big brother, this must be the birth of a treasure. The other low-level monarch with short hair was in ecstasy. They could sense a trace of the aura of a treasured sword in this sword intent. The Emperor's Sky Continent was filled with experts and countless treasures. There were often emperors who perished due to various reasons. The treasures on their bodies naturally became ownerless. However, these treasures had their own intelligence and weren't willing to be left out. Every once in a while, they would emit a powerful aura and attract experts to fight for them. Without any hesitation, the trio flew towards the mountain with extreme speed. Wielding the Joint Heaven Sword, Li Fuchen closed his eyes while a torrent of information surged into his mind. Soon enough, the information was reorganized and a set of words appeared in his mind. Absolute Heaven Sword Art, Heaven Class Low-Tier Sword Art. Takes the intent to exterminate heaven and earth. Performs the deed of exterminating heaven and earth. Once the sword is brandished, all laws will be broken. Once the sword is brandished, the sword Dao will be boundless. After reading the words, Li Fuchen revealed a delighted expression. As expected, after unlocking the second seal, the Joint Heaven Sword turned into a Heaven-class low-tier artifact sword. The sword art contained within was naturally a Heaven-class low-tier sword art. Furthermore, Li Fuchen had a feeling that this Heaven-class low-tier sword art, Absolute Heaven Sword Art, was probably the most terrifying heaven-class low-tier sword art. The sword intent was too horrific and actually had the feeling of slicing the void. What was the void? It was the outer layer of the great Tao. It couldn't be seen or felt, and one could only vaguely know of its existence. Everything in the world was enveloped by the void. After letting out a turbid breath, Li Fuchen looked at Lei Donghai and the others. Just as he wanted to explain, his eyes suddenly turned sharp. Sky Ring Sword Armor. The joint heaven sword drew across the void and enveloped the four of them with a layer of sword intent. In the next moment, the mountain collapsed and three figures appeared in everyone's eyes. One was at the second level of Primary Sea Realm, one was at the third level of Primary Sea Realm, and one was at the fifth level of Primary Sea Realm. If it was in the past, Li Fuchen would only smile bitterly. It wasn't a problem to deal with a mid-level monarch, but it was a little forceful to deal with three monarchs. Apart from him and Lei Donghai, who could resist for a moment, Yuan Long and Gu Jui wouldn't be able to resist at all. But now, Li Fuchen only had battle intent. With the joint heaven sword in hand, he didn't have anything to be afraid of. Kid, these three monarchs can be used as a sacrifice to the sword. The sword spirit said lazily. Senior sword spirit, just wait and see. Li Fuchen shot out and faced the three monarchs. Senior Lei, don't make a move. A voice echoed in Lei Donghai's ears. All right. Lei Donghai, who was about to make a move, stopped. Big brother, isn't this person the wanted criminal of the South Sun County? The monarch with the mustache recognized Li Fuchen. He really is. The fifth-level monarch grinned as though he had picked up a treasure. An artifact and 5 million mid-grade spirit stones. Could today be the lucky day for the three brothers? Were they going to use their entire life's luck on this day? Kid, hand over the sword in your hand and surrender obediently. The fifth-level monarch said in a cold voice. If the sword is here, the person is here. If you are capable, come and take it personally. Li Fuchen said. Courting death. The third-level monarch with the mustache drew his battle saber and cleaved at Li Fuchen. Die. Li Fuchen flashed and dodged the saber light before he brandished the joint heaven sword with lightning speed. Rip. A scarlet thread appeared in the sky. It felt as though it had sliced open the void and drew across the waist of the monarch with the mustache. Immediately after, the monarch with the mustache was split into two. Fresh blood sprayed out and stained the monarch at the side. Bastard, you killed my second brother. I want you dead. The fifth-level monarch revealed an expression of disbelief, which was quickly followed by fury. He raised his right hand high and grabbed abruptly. Boundless energy gathered in the sky, and it was like a giant amber that enveloped Li Fuchen. With his fifth-level primary sea realm cultivation, he was able to control the nature power, and it wasn't something that Lei Donghai could compare with. If it was any other seventh-level battle spirit realm martial artist, they would definitely be immobilized and wouldn't have any strength to retaliate. Chapter 592. Break. Li Fuchen didn't know how powerful a heaven-class sword move was when complemented with a heaven-class artifact sword, but he knew now. If the nature power that the fifth-level monarch controlled was a world, then Li Fuchen's joint heaven sword would be a sword that could destroy the world. A scarlet thread drew across the void and the amber-like world collapsed. Immediately after, the sword chi expanded into a dazzling red light and rushed at the monarch. How can the sword chi be so powerful? The fifth-level monarch raised his right hand like a shield to block the red light. His bone frame was the 7-star thick earth bone frame, and his chi was as heavy as a mountain. With the sky-flipping palm that could be used for both offense and defense, even monarchs of the same realm might not be able to break through his defense. Kid, you killed my second brother. I want you dead. On the side, the short-haired monarch produced a barbed whip. With a swing of the whip, it was like a malevolent python that coiled around Li Fuchen. Clang, 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 clang. There seemed to be an invisible barrier around Li Fuchen. When the barbed whip wrapped around Li Fuchen, there was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. Die! With a flash of the wind thunder wings, Li Fuchen appeared above the short-haired monarch and slashed down. No! The fifth-level monarch slammed his palm at Li Fuchen from a distance. The short-haired monarch followed in the footsteps of the bearded monarch. His body was split into two and he was dead. Immediately after, a palm print that was as heavy as a mountain pressed at Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen didn't have time to brandish his sword and had no choice but to point at the palm print with his left index and middle fingers. Boom! Li Fuchen was sent flying while his chi blood was boiling. Without the joint heaven sword, Li Fuchen wasn't a match for a 5th-level monarch. But now that his body refinement was at the completion level of Battle Spirit Realm, it was hard for the monarch to injure him. Damn it, Allah Hanshan, am going to tear you into pieces and take revenge for my 2nd and 3rd brothers. Hanshan was about to go insane. His 2nd and 3rd brothers might not be his biological brothers, but they had gone through life and death together. He originally thought that today was their lucky day, but who would have expected that his 2nd and 3rd brothers would perish because of this? He wasn't able to stop Li Fuchen at all. There is no need for revenge, you can just accompany them in hell. Li Fuchen had always treated his friends with sincerity, but he treated his enemies with cruelty. Die for me! Hanshan was in a frenzied state. The thick earth power burst out from his body and slammed at Li Fuchen with the thick earth great palm. The great earth palm was even more tyrannical than the heaven-flipping palm. With a single palm strike, even the void seemed to be compressed, leaving no room for escape. Clang! A bright scarlet thread blocked the giant handprint. Between the two, there was an astonishing energy fluctuation. Rumble! The giant handprint and the scarlet crystal thread exploded at the same time, stirring up the air. Boom, 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 boom. Between the two of them, one was constantly sending out earthen giant palm imprints, while the other was constantly sending out scarlet crystal threads. The battle was incomparably intense. Lei Donghai held his breath as he stared at the threads that filled the sky and the gigantic palm imprints that blotted out the sky. He believed that if he was in Hanshan's shoes, he would definitely not be a match for Hanshan. Junior brother Li's strength? Yuan Long and Gu Juri opened their mouths wide and forgot to close them. In this world, was there such an incredible 7th-level battle spirit realm martial artist? One of Hanshan's arms was cut off. Next was her thigh. Next was her head. Hanshan's attack power might be similar to Li Fuchen, but in terms of spiritual awareness, Hanshan was far inferior to Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen had wasted so much time with Hanshan because he wanted to test his strength. After keeping Hanshan's storage bag, Li Fuchen let out a turbid breath. No wonder it is a heaven-class low-tier artifact sword. It consumes too much chi. With my strength, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with mid-level monarchs. But if I encounter high-level monarchs, even if I can last for a period of time, I will be in the awkward situation of exhausting my chi. Junior Li. Lei Donghai and the others flew over. Junior Li, you can even kill mid-level monarchs now? Yuan Long quickly asked. Even a heaven-class master would only be able to kill regular low-level monarchs. Li Fuchen's artifact sword might not look simple, but Li Fuchen was only at the 7th level of Battle Spirit Realm and there was still room for improvement in the future. Lei Donghai said, Junior Li is already able to create a heaven-class sword move and the 34th rank of the cultivation technique. Killing mid-level monarchs shouldn't be considered a problem. There might be Battle Spirit Realm experts that were more formidable than Li Fuchen, but they must have cultivated heaven-class martial arts or even heaven-class cultivation techniques. They weren't like Li Fuchen who created his own heaven-class martial arts and cultivation techniques. Li Fuchen said, we shouldn't stay here for long. Let's change locations. The county protector was too powerful and people in the East River County could recognize him. Once he was surrounded by a large number of primary Sea Realm monarchs, it would be useless even if Li Fuchen's strength was doubled. This time, the four of them hid in one of the dangerous places in the East River County, the Thousands River Marsh. As for places with a lot of people, even if it was a village, the four of them couldn't go there. Regular martial artists might not have the strength to pursue them, but they could send a message. The Thousands River Marsh was said to be a convergence of thousands of rivers. The rivers were intricate and complicated. Even people who were familiar with the waterways would easily get lost. In the Thousands River Marsh, water beasts roamed freely. It was rumored that a demonic beast ruler was sleeping in a certain place in the Thousands River Marsh, but it was unknown if it was true. On a short mountain beside a river, Li Fuchen and the others temporarily settled down. Senior Yuan Long, Senior Gu, the two of you strive to break through to the primary sea realm as soon as possible to prevent any mishaps. Li Fuchen said to Yuan Long and Gu Ji. Among the four of them, Yuan Long and Gu Ji had the weakest strength. Once they encountered danger, Li Fuchen and Lei Donghai wouldn't be able to take care of them. All right. Yuan Long and Gu Ji were actually very anxious. In the past, they were facing battle spirit realm opponents. Right now, they were facing primary sea realm monarchs. The two of them didn't even have the right to interfere and had to ask Lei Donghai and Li Fuchen to protect them. That's right, Senior Yuan Long. This human body description might be useful for you to break through to the primary sea realm. Li Fuchen took out a jade scroll from his storage bag and handed it to Yuan Long. Yuan Long received the jade scroll and took a look at the contents before saying with delight, "It is indeed useful for me. I am truly foolish and should have collected this human body description earlier." Li Fuchen smiled and said, "I only obtained it by chance. It is normal that Senior Yuan Long didn't think of it. Back then, if it wasn't for the sake of creating the 34th rank of the cultivation technique, Li Fuchen wouldn't have collected these things. With this human body description, I have a greater chance of progressing to the primary sea realm. Let's not talk about it first. I will go and research it." Yuan Long quickly went into seclusion. He was a body refinement martial artist and cultivated qi blood and qi power. The qi in the high-grade spirit stone was of a very high grade and could be converted into qi blood and qi power. However, sharpening the axe wouldn't delay the work of cutting firewood. Studying the human body description that he just obtained would allow him to achieve twice the results with half the effort. Lei Donghai and the others went into seclusion. Li Fuchen found an empty space near the short mountain and started to practice his sword. The Absolute Heaven Sword art was a complete Heaven-class low-tier sword art. As compared to the incomplete Heaven-class sword moves, the Absolute Heaven Sword art was much stronger and the sword intent was more complete. With the Joint Heaven Sword, Li Fuchen's cultivation speed of the Absolute Heaven Sword art was more than 2 times faster than when he created the Heaven-class sword moves. In just 3 days, Li Fuchen cultivated the Absolute Heaven Sword art to the completion stage. A week later, he had reached the Great Perfection realm. Half a month later, with the help of the mid-grade Heaven Stone, Li Fuchen pushed the Absolute Heaven Sword art to the trance stage. Slash. Facing the river, Li Fuchen slashed. Crackle. Chapter 593. The Absolute Heaven Sword technique was awe-inspiring and overbearing. When the sword was unleashed, it gave people a feeling that it could exterminate the heavens and exterminate the earth. And its only sword move was called Absolute Heaven and Exterminate the Earth. This move was incomparably terrifying, far surpassing Merciless Edge and Meteor Fall. It wasn't that his power was much greater, but that his attacks had no blind spots. What was called an attack with no blind spots? It meant that no matter how you defended, this move would always hit you. Li Fuchen believed that even the Sky Ring Sword armor wouldn't be able to defend against this move, because this move already contained traces of void law. One had to know that there was a gap between everything. If a piece of dense steel was magnified 10,000 times or even 100,000 times, the gap would be terrifyingly large. Since the void was everywhere, the Heaven and Earth Extinguishing Sword technique was naturally everywhere as well. Of course, the Heaven and Earth Annihilation only contained traces of the laws of the void. It couldn't completely ignore the enemy's defenses. In short, if Li Fuchen had grasped the Heaven and Earth Extermination earlier, he might have been able to kill Hun Shan in a single sword. Forcefully spitting out a breath of air, Li Fuchen's sword intent dissipated. The Absolute Heaven Sword technique is unbelievably strong, but according to the sword spirit, sword patterns are actually more important. Picking up a branch from the ground, Li Fuchen's qi turned into a sword pattern and engraved it on the branch. The next moment, the branch burst out with a fierce aura that could destroy the world. With a light wave, the branch on the opposite side of the river, which was already broken, was cut into a ravine. The pervasive sword intent was like a bone-scraping steel knife, destroying everything near the ravine. When one's attainment in sword runes reaches a certain level, it's actually so terrifying. Li Fuchen's eyes flashed with delight. A sword inscription master had always been a support. However, when a sword inscription master grasped a heaven-class sword pattern, his strength would reach an extremely terrifying level. It would be equivalent to grasping a simple heaven-class sword move. Bang! As Li Fuchen withdrew his qi, the branch crumbled into powder and disappeared with the wind. The higher the grade of the sword pattern, the higher the grade of materials needed to support it. Not to mention a tree branch, even an ordinary earth-grade peak-tier sword probably wouldn't be able to support it for too long. 1 month later, Yuan Long broke through and his body refinement had reached the initial level of primary Sea realm. Body refinement cultivation was different from true Qi cultivation. There were no 9 levels, and there were only 4 levels: initial stage, advanced stage, and perfection stage. After reaching the initial level of primary Sea realm, Yuan Long was almost at his limit. He was only cultivating an Earth-class mid-tier body refinement technique and could only cultivate to the initial level of primary Sea realm. Li Fuchen was cultivating the Earth-class high-tier body refinement technique, Dragon Elephant Body Forging Chapter. It was almost at the completion level of primary Sea realm. Yuan Long, whose body refinement was at the initial level of primary Sea realm, was slightly stronger than Lei Donghai in close combat. It was mainly because the body refinement technique was too tyrannical. This was only an Earth-class mid-tier body refinement technique. If Yuan Long could obtain an Earth-class high-tier body refinement technique, his strength would greatly surpass Lei Donghai. Of course, Lei Donghai was no match for him in close combat, but if they were to truly fight, it was hard to say who was stronger and who was weaker. 1.5 months later, Guji also broke through. With the brightness bone frame, her speed was extremely fast after the breakthrough. When she flew, she was just like a ray of light and was much faster than Yuan Long and Lei Donghai. This was because Guji didn't cultivate a brightness cultivation technique. If she cultivated a brightness cultivation technique, Yuan Long and Guji wouldn't even be able to see Guji's shadow, let alone fight with her. Just like Lei Donghai, after Yuan Long and Guji broke through to the primary Sea realm, Li Fuchen gave them a large number of subpar-grade heaven stones and a few pieces of low-grade heaven stones. The subpar-grade heaven stones might not be useful to primary Sea realm monarchs, but the trio had just broken through and it was the time to consolidate their law foundation. The subpar-grade heaven stones could help them perfect their law foundation. After the law foundation was consolidated, it wouldn't be too late to use the low-grade heaven stones to increase the law foundation. Of course, it was actually better to use the low-grade heaven stones to consolidate and perfect the law foundation. A single low-grade heaven stone was equivalent to a few dozen subpar-grade heaven stones or even more. After all, the lower the grade of the heaven stone, the lower the level of the law power. There were times when quantity was useless. However, Li Fuchen didn't have a lot of low-grade heaven stones. Now that he was wanted and couldn't enter any city, it was natural that he couldn't go to the stone gambling den to gamble. Every low-grade heaven stone that he used was 1 less. Yuan Long and Guji had breakthroughs, but Li Fuchen didn't slack off either. He used the high-grade spirit stones to increase his body refinement to the perfection level of the battle spirit realm. His body refinement strength was already comparable to monarch-class masters. High-grade spirit stones are indeed high-grade spirit stones. They can be converted into Qi blood and Qi power, but the consumption is rather high. In order to increase his body refinement from the completion level of the battle spirit realm to the perfection level, Li Fuchen had used up dozens of high-grade spirit stones. Such consumption was more than 10 times more than cultivating Qi. Of course, it was mainly because Li Fuchen was cultivating an Earth-class high-tier body refinement technique. If it was an Earth-class mid-tier body refinement technique, he would probably need around 20 high-grade spirit stones. Despite the case, the demand for resources for the body refinement was still astounding to Li Fuchen. He was only at the battle spirit realm. Once he reached the primary Sea realm, how many high-grade spirit stones would he need to increase his body refinement? In comparison, It seems like it is more worthwhile to use elixirs to increase my cultivation. As for the impurities in the elixirs, I will just use the mortal calamity power to eliminate them, Li Fuchen said to himself. He only had a total of over 5,000 high-grade spirit stones and he had to conserve them. There were plenty of demonic beasts in the 10,000 River Swamp, but most of them were Class 6 demonic beasts. After the 4 of them stayed in this place for a long time, they still encountered a Class 7 low-tier demonic king. A Class 7 low-tier demonic king was something that 3 to 5 low-level primary sea realm monarchs might not be able to contest with. For a long time, martial artists were able to contest with demonic beasts and demons and even had the absolute advantage because their cultivation techniques and martial arts could keep up. But after reaching the demonic king level, in order to contest with the demonic beasts, the requirements for cultivation techniques and martial arts would be even higher. In fact, since ancient times, the emergence of cultivation techniques and martial arts were always related to demonic beasts and demons. In order to contest with demonic beasts and demons, human experts had exhausted their wisdom and created horrific cultivation techniques and martial arts. It could be said that the stronger the demonic beasts and demons were, the stronger the cultivation techniques and martial arts that appeared in human history. If humans weren't powerful enough, they wouldn't be able to dominate the continents. Only the sea wasn't under the control of humans. This Class 7 low-tier demonic king was a blood crystal electric eel. It could release blood-colored lightning and the power was much stronger than Lei Donghai's thunderhammer. Furthermore, the destructive range was extremely large. Within a radius of a few miles, the blood-colored lightning would envelop the area like a blood-colored ball of lightning. Lei Donghai and the others fought for a long time but weren't able to eliminate the blood crystal electric eel. At the crucial moment, Li Fuchen used the heaven and earth extermination to slice the blood crystal electric eel into dozens of pieces. Lei Donghai and the others looked at each other with dismay. This blood crystal electric eel wasn't any easier to deal with than Hunshan, but it couldn't even withstand a single slash from Li Fuchen. During this period of time, how much did Li Fuchen's strength improve? After being stimulated, the trio continued to go into seclusion. They didn't have the ability to create heaven-class martial arts or cultivation techniques, but they could continue to comprehend the bone frame pattern and strive to push the power of their divine ability to a higher level. It is time to study the peak-grade spirit stone. Li Fuchen took out a dazzling spirit stone that had a chi presence like a black hole from his wrist guard's spatial zone. They are both spirit stones, but the difference between a peak-grade spirit stone and a high-grade spirit stone is like gold and mud. A high-grade spirit stone was already precious, but a peak-grade spirit stone was a few million times more precious. It was incomparable. Li Fuchen held the peak-grade spirit stone and attempted to absorb the spirit chi within. Just like riding a rocket, Li Fuchen's cultivation instantly climbed from the initial stage of the 7th level of Battle Spirit Realm to the middle stage, then to the late stage and then to the peak stage. Boom! Li Fuchen broke through from the 7th level of Battle Spirit Realm to the 8th level of Battle Spirit Realm. Middle stage of 8th level of Battle Spirit Realm. Late stage. Peak stage. 9th level of Battle Spirit Realm. When Li Fuchen stopped absorbing the spirit chi, his cultivation was already stabilized at the extremity of the 9th level of Battle Spirit Realm. At this moment, he didn't feel any discomfort. Be it the purity of his chi or his mental state, they were all very stable. Such a terrifying peak-grade spirit stone. Li Fuchen was shocked. The spirit chi within the peak-grade spirit stone was of an unimaginable grade. It was countless times purer than Li Fuchen's own chi. A trace of spirit chi could be converted into a large amount of chi. Furthermore, the peak-grade spirit stone contained heaven and earth law, allowing Li Fuchen's mental state to be very full. The most terrifying thing was that after advancing by 2 levels, the spirit chi within the peak-grade spirit stone didn't have any changes. Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness was extremely sharp and he should be able to sense if the spirit chi within the spirit stone decreased by a little. If he couldn't sense it, it meant that there was too much spirit chi within the peak-grade spirit stone. It was just like a bowl of water in a large river. Who would be able to see it? Li Fuchen didn't dare to allow his chi cultivation to continue breaking through, At least not now. Chapter 594. As compared to the dragon elephant power, the peak grade spirit stone's spirit chi was also of a higher grade. A trace of peak grade spirit chi was easily converted into a large amount of dragon elephant power. Boom. After an unknown period of time, Li Fuchen progressed. That's right, Li Fuchen's body refinement had progressed to the primary C realm. Crack, crack, crack. Within Li Fuchen's body, there were countless subtle explosions. This was the rapid transformation of the body and the sound of the impurities collapsing. Impurities would always exist. At the battle spirit realm, the parts that weren't considered essences but weren't considered impurities had all turned into impurities at this moment. The cultivation of the martial Dao was a process of eliminating the impurities. The so-called extremity might not exist. As the impurities in the body were collapsing, Li Fuchen's body became extremely compact. This kind of compact wasn't just the body's structure, it was also the vitality and strength that were compact. But at the same time, Li Fuchen felt that it was too compact. It felt as though he was wearing an extremely tight shirt and it was uncomfortable. Li Fuchen understood that his body had reached the limit of endurance. A few months ago, he was still at the perfection level of Reincarnation realm. Right now, he was already at the initial level of primary C realm. In just a short period of time, his body had metamorphosed too quickly. It was so fast that his body didn't even have time to adapt. Buzz. Clenching his fist, Li Fuchen punched at the void. It was unknown if it was an illusion, but Li Fuchen felt that the void in front of his fist had formed an arc. It felt as though the fist had distorted the void. Such violent power. Li Fuchen's eyes burst out with radiance as the giant dragon spirit rose up. The giant dragon spirit didn't roar, but the void within a few miles was compressed into a solid state by the spirit. Such a suppression method was much stronger than Hun Shan's control of the nature power. Li Fuchen had a feeling that if he was willing, regular low-level monarchs would find it hard to move when enveloped by his Qi spirit. The body refinement Dao was based on power. Li Fuchen's Qi spirit contained extremely powerful power law. In terms of restraint, it was obviously superior to the Qi Dao. After withdrawing the Qi spirit, Li Fuchen sized up the peak-grade spirit stone in his hand. If Li Fuchen's Qi cultivation had progressed from the 7th level of Battle Spirit Realm to the extremity of the 9th level of Battle Spirit Realm, he would need around 20 high-grade spirit stones worth of spirit Qi. In order to progress his body refinement from the perfection level of Battle Spirit Realm to the initial level of Primary C Realm, Li Fuchen had used up a few hundred high-grade spirit stones spirit Qi. It sounded exaggerated, but the spiritual Qi in the top-grade spirit stone was only a little less. It was estimated that it was equivalent to a jar of water losing a spoonful of water. And it was one of those little spoons that babies use. Now that Li Fuchen's body refinement was at the primary C realm, it didn't just allow his body refinement strength to be comparable with Qi cultivation strength. Most importantly, Li Fuchen's pure body defense allowed him to resist an all-out attack from a regular low-level monarch. If Li Fuchen only used the red lotus sword to execute the flowing merciless edge, he would only be able to leave a wound on his body and wouldn't be able to penetrate deeper. With such a powerful defense, Li Fuchen had the confidence to face any mid-level monarchs. Right now, only high-level monarchs could pose a threat to him. As for Li Fuchen's Qi cultivation strength, it didn't increase by much. Li Fuchen's Qi cultivation took up too little of a proportion of his Qi cultivation. The joint heaven sword and the heaven-class sword art took up the majority of his Qi cultivation. Therefore, when Li Fuchen's cultivation increased by 2 levels, his Qi cultivation was only increased by 10%. But with a stronger Qi cultivation, Li Fuchen was able to wield the joint heaven sword for a longer period of time. Additionally, by activating the wind thunder wings, Li Fuchen would be able to move faster and last longer. The Myriad River Pool was a dangerous place after all. Since it was a dangerous place, there would naturally be people who came to explore. On this day, Li Fuchen would release his spiritual awareness every 2 hours as he tried his best to avoid being discovered by the explorers. A few thousand miles away, a large group of monarchs appeared in the sky above the Myriad River Pool. The leader of the monarchs was actually at the 8th level of primary sea realm. The Myriad River Pool was one of the top dangerous places in the East River County and even the Cloud Province. It was rich in resources and produced waterpath herbs. There was once someone who discovered multiple stalks of heaven-class herbs in the depths of the Myriad River Pool. There was even a heaven-class mid-tier Myriad River herb. As such, there were plenty of monarchs that came to explore. Every once in a while, there would be a group of monarchs that would come. Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness was extremely powerful and was comparable with half-emperors. But Li Fuchen's cultivation wasn't at the primary sea realm and there were still some differences in the details. As such, the leader of the 8th level monarchs immediately sensed a spiritual awareness sweeping over them. When his spiritual awareness extended to the extremity, he didn't notice anyone. He frowned and understood that the owner of this spiritual awareness had a cultivation level that was higher than him. It was probably a top-notch primary sea realm monarch. Everyone be careful. His spirit tensed up as he reminded everyone. A few thousand miles away, Li Fuchen said to Lei Donghai and the others, "A large group of monarchs is coming. Let's go." While speaking, he felt rather helpless. The Emperor's sky continent might be massive, but there were plenty of monarchs too. It was truly difficult to find a safe place to stay. Soon enough, Li Fuchen and the others left. Along the way, Lei Donghai said, "Junior Li, why don't we leave the Red Moon Empire and head to other places?" The Emperor's sky continent had a total of 7 major Emperor-class factions and the Red Moon Empire was just one of them. At the north of the Red Moon Empire was the Celestial Eye Cult. The Celestial Eye Cult Patriarch, the Celestial Eye Great Emperor, was an all-powerful individual. It was said that he had all sorts of methods to track his enemies. Even if the enemies fled to the ends of the world, it would still be useless. In the west was the Soul Sky Empire. The Soul Sky Empire's ruler, the Soul Emperor, was the #1 expert of the Emperor Sky continent. His spiritual awareness attack was said to be able to destroy regular law phase realm emperors' true spirits. Even the Red Moon Emperor and other great Emperor-class figures were apprehensive and didn't dare to make an enemy out of the Soul Sky Empire. It isn't impossible. Li Fuchen was also considering this problem. For the following cultivation, they would definitely need to use all sorts of resources. In the Red Moon Empire, they couldn't even show themselves. Disguising might be able to avoid being recognized, but a simple disguise would only be able to deceive regular martial artists and not primary sea realm monarchs. Circulating the chi blood to change one's appearance and figure might be able to deceive primary sea realm monarchs, but such a disguise wouldn't last long. Once a battle broke out, the chi blood wouldn't be able to be controlled and would revert back to their original appearance and figure. Of course, most importantly, Li Fuchen didn't wish to disguise for the rest of his life. The martial Dao had to be courageous and diligent while the mental state had to be clear. The sword Dao had to overcome all obstacles and be fearless. What was the point of disguising while roaming the world? In the end, it would probably affect one's mental state and turn one into a timid person, forever unable to ascend to the pinnacle. This wasn't the life that Li Fuchen wanted, neither was it the life that Lei Donghai and the others wanted. Right now, they didn't have any attachments in the Red Moon Empire. Heading to another place was definitely the best choice. Chapter 595. After a discussion, the 4 of them decided to head to the Soul Sky Empire. They didn't go to the Celestial Eye Cult because they had plenty of tracking secret techniques. If they offended one of the upper echelons and got tracked by the tracking secret techniques, they would be in trouble. The Soul Sky Empire was 4 counties away from the East River County. With their speed, if they didn't use teleportation arrays, they would need at least half a year to arrive. Along the way, the 4 of them intentionally avoided cities and went to places that were desolate. Even though the 4 of them were very careful, they were still discovered by others. The 4 of them had underestimated the power of 1 million mid-grade spirit stones. With the South Sun County as the center, even commoners had seen the wanted posters. It couldn't be helped as the news would spread like wildfire. In the face of a sky-high reward, commoners wouldn't be able to resist looking at the wanted posters. Furthermore, with the county protector's orders, Let alone the cities, even the towns and villages had wanted posters. It was hard not to see them. 1 million mid-grade spirit stones was something even primary sea realm monarchs would go crazy for, let alone commoners with low cultivation. Once they obtained 1 million mid-grade spirit stones, they would be able to purchase a luxurious courtyard and plenty of shops in a major city. The remaining mid-grade spirit stones would be enough for them to develop a major clan and wouldn't lack spirit stones for several lifetimes or even 10 lifetimes. After all, the lower the cultivation, the lower the demand for spirit stones. A reincarnation realm expert would probably only use a few dozen mid-grade spirit stones in their lifetime. It could be said that living in a city was a commoner's greatest wish. Only in a city, there would be the best resources and the best environment. At the same time, killing was forbidden in the city, making it very safe for them to live in the city. Along the way, the four of them would more or less encounter some commoners with low cultivation. But the four of them weren't bloodthirsty individuals and they couldn't possibly kill anyone to keep their mouths shut. The one who discovered the four of them was a reincarnation realm expert. He was harvesting herbs in the wilderness and saw Li Fuchen and the others from afar. The four of them might have disguised themselves, but there were 3 males and 1 female. Furthermore, their chi presence was extremely similar to the chi presence on the wanted posters, therefore, they were still exposed. After obtaining the information, a large group of primary sea realm monarchs chased after them from the nearest city. Clear Peace County was the closest county to the Soul Sky Empire. Kill! With Li Fuchen as the spearhead, the four of them charged at the 5 primary sea realm monarchs. Unknowingly, a giant encirclement net appeared. Li Fuchen and the others were like fish in the net and could be caught at any moment. Wielding the joint heaven sword, Li Fuchen slashed and severed 3 primary sea realm monarchs into 2. The remaining 2 monarchs had also suffered severe injuries. Under Lei Donghai and the other 2's attacks, the 2 of them didn't even have time to rejoice before they were instantly killed. This is already the 3rd batch. Lei Donghai's expression was ugly. Li Fuchen said, "If the 4 of us stand together, it will be too conspicuous and will attract suspicion easily. We have to reach the Soul Sky Empire before the encirclement is completed." On the surface, there weren't any teleportation arrays between the Soul Sky Empire and the Red Moon Empire. Hence, the 4 of them could only be considered truly safe after entering the Soul Sky Empire. A few hours later, the 4 encountered another group of primary sea realm monarchs. This group of monarchs only had 3 individuals, but one of them was actually a 7th level monarch. This made Lei Donghai and the other 2's expressions turn gloomy. The trio knew Li Fuchen's strength inside out. If Li Fuchen encountered a mid-level monarch, he was completely confident he could kill them. He just needed to spend a little more time. But if he encountered a high-level monarch, it would be very difficult to kill them. It was nearly impossible. Don't think that you can hide from my Blue Star Monarch's discerning eyes just because you changed your appearance. Are the 4 of you going to surrender or resist with all your might? The Blue Star Monarch looked at Li Fuchen and the others calmly. The Blue Star Monarch was a 7th level monarch and had the 7-star star bone frame. It allowed his strength to be much stronger than regular 7th level monarchs. Even if he encountered a 9th level monarch, he would still be able to contest. The 3 of you will deal with the other 2 mid-level monarchs. I will use my spiritual awareness attack and illusion art attack to assist you. Leave the Blue Star Monarch to me. If Li Fuchen's body refinement hadn't reached the primary sea realm, he wouldn't be a match for the Blue Star Monarch. But now, Li Fuchen believed that he was still able to contest. Go! Not wishing to waste any time, Li Fuchen immediately charged at the Blue Star Monarch. The Blue Star Monarch revealed a mocking expression and said to the other 2 beside him, "I will leave the other 3 to the 2 of you. It shouldn't be a problem, right?" Blue Star Monarch doesn't have to worry. The 3 of them are only at the 1st level of primary sea realm. I alone can deal with them. One of the aquiline-nosed men said nonchalantly, "Don't be careless." After leaving a statement, the Blue Star Monarch produced a blue hook in his hand. With a flash, he charged at Li Fuchen. Clang! The blue hook clashed with the joint heaven sword and Li Fuchen was sent flying. 7-star special bone frame. Li Fuchen's expression changed. In the previous few massacres, Li Fuchen might not have encountered any 7th-level monarchs, but he did encounter a 6th-level monarch. If it was a regular 7th-level monarch, no matter how strong they were, they wouldn't be much stronger than a 6th-level monarch. But the Blue Star Monarch's strength wasn't just a little stronger than a 6th-level monarch, it was at least 2 times stronger. Only a 7-star special bone frame could explain the Blue Star Monarch's strength. After all, the special bone frame didn't just have powerful divine abilities, it also enhanced the Qi cultivation strength. Li Fuchen was shocked, but the Blue Star Monarch was even more shocked. His attack was so tyrannical, but it actually didn't severely injure Li Fuchen. Heaven-class artifact sword, primary C realm body refinement. The Blue Star Monarch wasn't a fool to be able to cultivate to this level. In an instant, he knew why Li Fuchen was able to withstand his attack without getting injured. In his opinion, Li Fuchen was definitely a person with astounding talent. In terms of Qi cultivation strength, Li Fuchen was at least a 3-star general. With the Heaven-class artifact sword and primary C realm body refinement, it was indeed possible for Li Fuchen to withstand his attack. While sizing up the joint heaven sword in Li Fuchen's hand, the Blue Star Monarch's heart was burning with passion. This time, he wouldn't just be able to obtain 5 million mid-grade spirit stones, he would also be able to obtain a Heaven-class artifact sword. He had to grasp this opportunity. After knowing that Li Fuchen wouldn't be injured easily, the Blue Star Monarch didn't hold back anymore and executed the Blue Star hook art with his full strength. Swish, 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 swish. The world was filled with flickering blue hook shadows. These hook shadows were vicious and tyrannical. When some of the hook shadows landed on the ground, they would crystallize and explode. Flowing merciless edge. When facing the Blue Star Monarch who was going all out, Li Fuchen endured and didn't execute the absolute heaven sword art. Instead, he used the flowing merciless edge to deal with the enemy. The absolute heaven sword art would only be effective at the crucial moment, and now wasn't the time. Bang 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 bang, the blue hook shadow exploded around Li Fuchen and blasted Li Fuchen away. If Li Fuchen didn't cultivate an Earth-class high-tier body refinement technique, but an Earth-class mid-tier body refinement technique, he would already be severely injured and on the verge of death. On the other side, Lei Donghai and the others were attacking the aquiline-nosed man and the bald middle-aged man. Just as both sides were about to burst out their attacks, 2 spiritual awareness attacks suddenly bore into the minds of the aquiline-nosed man and the bald middle-aged man. After reaching the extremity of the 9th level of Battle Spirit Realm, Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness attacks were much stronger than before. As for how much stronger, Li Fuchen didn't know. After all, along the way, no one was qualified enough for him to execute his spiritual awareness attacks. The aquiline-nosed man and the bald middle-aged man yelled miserably. The qi that they had just condensed had instantly dispersed, and even their qi protection had become unstable. Thunder Divine Hammer. Arhat True Body. Sword of Brightness. Lei Donghai and the others knew that they couldn't afford to lose this opportunity and blasted at the duo with their full strength. The duo was sent flying like burlap sacks while vomiting fresh blood. Damn it, they have spiritual awareness talents among them. The bald middle-aged man roared. Spiritual awareness talents were the most fearsome type of martial artist and were comparable with illusion technique martial artists. When encountering such people, one couldn't use their cultivation to judge the opponent's strength. Lei Donghai and the others chased after them and attacked frenziedly. Blue Star Monarch, save us. The aquiline-nosed man was extremely aggrieved and fearful. Right now, he might have 100% of his strength, but he couldn't even utilize 10% of it. How was he going to fight? The Blue Star Monarch frowned and berated, "Hurry up and stop. Otherwise, once I capture this child, I will make you suffer a fate worse than death." Lei Donghai and the others didn't bother about him. What a joke, who was the Blue Star Monarch? If he wanted them to stop, they would stop. Seeing that Lei Donghai and the others were ignoring him, the Blue Star Monarch was infuriated. "Good, very good. Since you are so stubborn, you will suffer later." As he spoke, he didn't bother about the aquiline-nosed man and the bald middle-aged man. To him, Li Fuchen was the most important. If he could capture Li Fuchen, he would be able to save a lot of time in his life. 1,000 hooks cut. The Blue Star Monarch executed his finishing move as he wasn't afraid that Li Fuchen would die. With Li Fuchen's strength, this finishing move would at most severely injure Li Fuchen. In fact, the Blue Star Monarch had overestimated himself. During the 6 months from the East River County to the Clear Peace County, Li Fuchen might have spent most of the time traveling, but the remaining time was used to create the 35th rank of the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique. Hard work paid off. Half a month ago, Li Fuchen created the 35th rank of the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique. Furthermore, this time, the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique wasn't just a pure fire Dao cultivation technique, it was fused with Li Fuchen's Sword Dao comprehension. It wasn't exaggerating to say that the current Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique was already considered a fire Dao cultivation technique and was much stronger than a pure fire Dao cultivation technique. Had it not been for the Blue Star Monarch's 7-star special bone frame, Li Fuchen might not be a match for his opponent, but he wouldn't be completely suppressed. After being sent flying again, Li Fuchen still wasn't injured. However, his chi blood was slightly boiling. At this moment, the bald middle-aged man had already been beaten to death by Lei Donghai and the others. Only the aquiline-nosed man was left struggling at death's door. Bastard, stars kill. The Blue Star Monarch was enraged. The star's power burst out and a starlight cross slash was blasted at Li Fuchen. PFFF. Chapter 596. Right at this moment, the hook-nosed man also let out a blood-curdling scream as he was killed by Lei Donghai and the other two. It's time! Li Fuchen launched a spiritual awareness attack at the Blue Star Monarch. Blue Star Monarch's body swayed. Before this, he had already executed his spiritual awareness defense secret technique, but when facing Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness attack, he still felt his mind rumbling. On the surface of his true spirit, there was a crack on the layer of armor. Although his real spirit was incomparably strong, his attainments in spiritual sense defense secret techniques were not very high. Moreover, anyone who had something that didn't belong to them in their mind would feel uncomfortable. One spiritual consciousness attack after another bombarded the Blue Star Monarch, causing the Blue Star Monarch's mind to be in a mess. Of course, the Blue Star Monarch was a 7-star star bone frame and was also at the 7th level of Primary Sea Realm. Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness attack wasn't able to make him lose his combat strength. Forcefully concentrating, the Blue Star Monarch's blue hook turned into countless hook shadows that enveloped Li Fuchen. He didn't expect this move to injure Li Fuchen, he only hoped to interrupt Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness attack. But he was disappointed. Even in combat, Li Fuchen was able to launch precise spiritual awareness attacks and wasn't affected at all. After dozens of spiritual consciousness attacks, the Blue Star Monarch's spiritual consciousness defense layer had long been shattered, and he was completely relying on his true spirit to withstand the attacks. 1,000 illusion eyes, oblivion. Feeling that it was about time, Li Fuchen released an illusion art attack. The Blue Star Monarch, who was already a little confused, fell into a brief illusion. Exterminate the heavens and exterminate the earth. A shocking sword intent rushed into the sky as Li Fuchen slashed at the Blue Star Monarch. Stimulated by the sword intent, the Blue Star King woke up and hurriedly waved his blue hook to block. Kacha kacha. With the Blue Star Monarch as the center, the void seemed to be dislocated and shattered. In the next moment, streams of blood bloomed on the Blue Star Monarch's body. The Blue Star Monarch's attack was naturally stronger than Li Fuchen, but his moves were far inferior to Li Fuchen in terms of exquisiteness. When facing Li Fuchen's absolute heaven sword art, the Blue Star hook art wasn't able to defend perfectly and there would always be sword chi seeping in. Damn it, what kind of sword art is this? The Blue Star Monarch was slightly flustered. As of now, Li Fuchen still didn't have the strength to kill him. That sword move earlier had only caused him to suffer some light injuries. But as time passed, the consequences would be unpredictable. As expected of a special bone frame. The true spirit is much stronger than I imagined. Li Fuchen had devoured a demonic beast ruler's demonic beast spirit's essence. As his cultivation was rapidly increasing, his spiritual awareness attack already contained a trace of emperor intent. Therefore, his spiritual awareness attack was much stronger than any primary sea realm monarch. If one strike wasn't enough, then he would use 2 strikes. If 2 strikes weren't enough, then he would use 3 strikes. More and more sword wounds appeared on Blue Star Monarch's body, and he started to panic. Right at this moment, Li Fuchen's expression suddenly changed as he transmitted a message to Lei Donghai and the others. There are primary sea realm monarchs rushing over from the south and east. All of you head towards the west. Primary sea realm monarchs were very sensitive to chi waves. Even if they were tens of thousands of miles away, they would be able to clearly sense the waves here. This was the Emperor Sky Continent. If it was the 7-color continent, they would be able to sense it even if they were a few 100,000 miles away. Junior brother Li, what about you? Lei Donghai asked. Don't bother about me. I think it is time to split up. We will meet again at the Soul Sky Empire's Dragon River Seats Gaze native city. The Soul Sky Empire's seats were equivalent to the Red Moon Empire's counties. However, the Soul Sky Empire had 72 seats and it was much more than the Red Moon Empire's 48 counties. Senior Lei, we won't be able to help Junior Brother Li even if we stay behind. We will only distract Junior Brother Li. Gu Jui was very calm as she said to Lei Donghai. All right. Lei Donghai nodded and flashed before flying towards the west. Yuan Long and Gu Jui followed closely behind. Seeing Lei Donghai and the others leaving, the Blue Star Monarch knew what was going on. If I didn't guess it wrongly, there should be primary sea realm monarchs rushing over. Kid, surrender now and you will still have a chance. Otherwise, when most of the primary sea realm monarchs rush over, you will suffer. He was very unwilling. If he captured Li Fuchen now, the 5 million mid-grade spirit stones would belong to him alone. If there were too many people, it wouldn't be easy to obtain the 5 million mid-grade spirit stones. The final result might be distribution based on contribution. Therefore, he could only hope that Li Fuchen would give up resisting, even though the possibility was very slim. Dream on. Heaven and Earth Extermination. After executing the illusion art, Li Fuchen immediately executed the absolute heaven sword art. The wind thunder wings flashed on his back as he flew out in a frenzy. Trying to escape? It isn't that easy. Blood burst out from the Blue Star Monarch's body as he gritted his teeth and chased relentlessly. With his speed, catching up to Li Fuchen was just a matter of a few breaths. But just as he increased his speed, a spiritual awareness attack entered his mind, followed by an illusion art attack. Li Fuchen's spiritual awareness was extremely powerful and could already use his spiritual awareness as a medium to release illusion art attacks. Damn it. If the Blue Star Monarch couldn't increase his speed, he naturally couldn't catch up to Li Fuchen. But he wasn't a fool either. He instantly executed the unique ability of primary sea realm monarchs, control of nature power. With his cultivation at the 7th level of primary sea realm, his full control of nature power was much more terrifying than Hunshan. From all directions, heaven and earth chi were surging at the Blue Star Monarch like a tsunami. Li Fuchen, who was traveling at extreme speed, felt like a fish swimming against the current. Even after using 10 times the strength, he still wasn't able to travel as fast as usual. That person is Li Fuchen. Capture him and we shall split the bounty equally. Finally, the monarchs from the south arrived and there were 9 of them. Immediately after, there were 6 monarchs from the east too. Due to the battle, Li Fuchen's appearance and body had already recovered to his original appearance, therefore he was easily recognized. Li Fuchen's heart sank to the bottom and he simply stopped fleeing. He turned around with a calm expression. Not going to flee anymore? The Blue Star Monarch sneered. That's true. Even if you flee now, you won't be able to escape. 16 monarchs. Among them, there was 1 7th-level monarch, 5 mid-level monarchs, and 10 low-level monarchs. This force was enough to kill a formidable high-level monarch. After taking a glance, Li Fuchen said indifferently, Flee? Why do you have to flee? I think you are the ones who should flee. Stubborn bastard. Don't waste your breath on him. Capture him now to prevent any undue troubles. A mid-level monarch with a fiery temper instantly attacked Li Fuchen. Li Fuchen revealed a grim smile and thought to himself, I wonder how powerful is my calamity. A large number of high-grade spirit stones were taken out by Li Fuchen and floated in the surroundings. Immediately after, the high-grade spirit stones shattered and surged into the body like a tide. Boom! Without any bottleneck, Li Fuchen broke through. A horrific chi presence erupted like a volcano and rushed into the sky. Just the chi presence was enough to neutralize the mid-level monarch's attack. Huff huff huff. The sky turned dark and huge fireballs descended from the sky. The fireballs didn't look big, but the fire Dao laws contained within were shocking. They had a premonition that if they were hit by the fireballs, they would at least be severely injured. This is the fire calamity. He is going to transcend the calamity to progress to the primary sea realm. Someone yelled out. He actually dares to progress to the primary sea realm in front of us. He truly doesn't know how to spell the word death. There were also people who were disdainful and felt that the fireballs were just for show. Blaze! A fireball landed on a low-level monarch. Even though the monarch tried to resist, it was still useless. He was immediately severely injured and his body was fuming with flames while his 7 orifices were spewing fire. Save me! The monarch yelled out miserably. Everyone took a deep cold breath. What kind of fire calamity was this? Why was it so powerful? Watch me extinguish this fireball. A 6th-level monarch brandished his weapon and cleaved apart a fireball. But before he could rejoice, a sword chi appeared out of nowhere and swept across his body. PFFFTSS, one of the monarch's legs was sliced off and blood splattered. Such a horrific sword calamity. Even the Blue Star Monarch was apprehensive. In fact, Li Fuchen could have already progressed to the primary sea realm after the calamity, but he didn't wish to break through so early. He wanted to deduce the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique to the 36th rank before breaking through. By then, it would be perfect and his potential would be maximized. But nothing was perfect in this world. Right now, he had no choice but to break through. If he didn't, he would die. Chapter 597. Boom boom boom. Half of the fireballs and sword chi were flying at Li Fuchen, but the other half were blasting at everyone else. The tribulation couldn't be witnessed by the side, otherwise, the Heaven Dao would treat everyone equally. Furthermore, the stronger the strength, the stronger the tribulation. The Blue Star Monarch's fire and sword calamity was much stronger than Li Fuchen's. After all, the Blue Star Monarch didn't rely on external items and was already very strong. Li Fuchen had to rely on the Joint Heaven Sword to contest with the Blue Star Monarch. The Heaven Dao wouldn't consider the Joint Heaven Sword as a part of Li Fuchen's strength. The tribulation targeted cultivation and law comprehension. Li Fuchen had pushed the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique to the 35th rank, therefore his cultivation level was similar to everyone else, but his cultivation strength was much stronger. Apart from that, Li Fuchen had also grasped the Heaven-class sword intent and his law comprehension wasn't comparable to most of the primary sea realm monarchs. Therefore, the fire calamity and sword calamity were terrifying. The first wave of fire calamity was able to severely injure low-level monarchs, while the second wave of sword calamity was able to severely injure a 6th-level monarch, although the 6th-level monarch was careless. There were continuous miserable screams as the monarchs were blasted and slain. The rest of the monarchs retreated frantically and wanted to retreat from the range of the tribulation. However, the tribulation wasn't something that could be avoided. Once one was locked on by the tribulation, there would be no rest until death, unless Li Fuchen completed the tribulation. Li Fuchen didn't bother about these people. With the tribulation around, these people wouldn't be able to protect themselves and it was impossible for them to disturb him. Wielding the Joint Heaven Sword, Li Fuchen cleaved apart the fireballs and the sword chi. 3rd wave, 4th wave, 5th wave, 6th wave. After 6 waves of heaven calamity, out of the 16 primary sea realm monarchs, only the Blue Star Monarch was still struggling. The rest were either incinerated by the fireball or killed by the sword chi. After destroying and devouring the 6 waves of tribulation chi, Li Fuchen's chi prowess was at an extreme level. The qi in his body was being compressed again and again before existing in a different form. This form of qi wasn't just simple qi, it was more like extraordinary power or special power that contained laws. As such, it was able to exist in Li Fuchen's body unscathed. Otherwise, even if Li Fuchen's body toughness was extremely tough, he would still explode from the endless qi. Damn it, how powerful is his tribulation? Blue Star Monarch's body was riddled with wounds. If the Blue Star Monarch was able to easily resist the first 3 waves of tribulation, the 4th wave was already quite taxing for him. For the 5th wave, he had to give it his all. For the 6th wave, even if he gave it his all, he was still battered and injured quite badly. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the next 3 waves of heavenly tribulation would be. When breaking through to the primary sea realm, there were 9 waves of tribulation. The 7th wave of the heavenly tribulation came. This time, it was no longer a fireball or a sword qi, but a flaming sword qi. The blazing flame sword qi was like a sword of world destruction as it slashed at Li Fuchen and the Blue Star Monarch. Boom! Li Fuchen brandished his sword and scattered the 3 blazing flame sword qi. His body immediately emitted a suction force to absorb the scattered blazing flame sword qi. As for the Blue Star Monarch, he was sent flying by the slash, flames rising from the wound on his body. These flames contained powerful fire sword Dao laws and were difficult to extinguish. This is the primary sea realm? Li Fuchen might not have transcended all 9 waves of tribulation, but he could already feel the intent of dominating all beings in the world. This intent could only be grasped by primary sea realm monarchs because the monarch's qi was fused with the technique intent. It was just like extraordinary power or special power, it was a part of the manifestation of laws. Of course, it wasn't as ridiculous as extraordinary power or special power for now. As his qi gradually transformed, Li Fuchen had an easier time resisting the tribulation. It was simply the opposite of the Blue Star Monarch. Of course, the joint heaven sword in Li Fuchen's hand was very useful. After the 7th wave of tribulation ended, the 8th wave was about to arrive. This is the end of my life. The Blue Star Monarch was hysterical as he used the blue hook to receive the blazing flame sword qi. Bang! The blazing flame sword qi exploded and countless sparks enveloped the Blue Star Monarch. There was a miserable scream as the sparks blasted holes on the Blue Star Monarch's body. It was as though the sparks had dripped onto meat. Before the 8th wave of tribulation ended, the Blue Star Monarch had perished completely and became a departed spirit of the tribulation. Li Fuchen didn't bother about the Blue Star Monarch's life and death. He wielded the joint heaven sword and dispersed the final blazing flame sword qi. The sky was getting darker. In the pitch-black sky, a sword tip emerged. This sword tip wasn't fiery red anymore, it had many colors. Li Fuchen's eyes contracted. He could feel many types of laws from this sword tip. There were blazing flame Dao laws, sword Dao laws, wind Dao laws, and void Dao laws. When the 4 types of laws were fused together, it allowed the sword tip to emit a power that was terrifying and filled with destructive qi presence. Swish! The sword tip shot out and it was a battle sword instead of sword qi. Li Fuchen rushed into the sky and executed the heaven and earth extermination. Clang! Clang clang! Clang clang clang! A man and a sword constantly clashed. Li Fuchen might be sent flying each time, but with the support of his tough physique, Li Fuchen wasn't injured. Gradually, the battle sword's power was getting weaker. Li Fuchen was sent flying at the start, but he was now able to contest with the battle sword. After a while, Li Fuchen was already able to suppress the battle sword. Shatter! When the sword was executed, the spatial zone in front was like a shattered mirror that enveloped the battle sword. Bang! The battle sword exploded and dispersed into extremely pure qi laws that fused into Li Fuchen's body. At this moment, Li Fuchen's qi presence had climbed to the extremity. He was like the ruler of heaven and earth that was looking down on all life. Li Fuchen withdrew his qi presence after releasing it and returned to normal. Li Fuchen looked down at his palm and clenched it lightly. Rumble! There was a sound that sounded like a tide. A massive amount of fire Dao Qi gathered from all directions. The prowess wasn't inferior to the Blue Star Monarch. As for why Li Fuchen could only control Fire Dao Qi and not Wind Dao Qi, Sword Dao Qi, or Void Qi, it was because Li Fuchen's Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique only contained Fire Dao Law and Sword Dao Law. It wasn't possible to control the power of nature with just the willpower. At least, Li Fuchen hadn't reached that stage yet. Sword Dao Qi wasn't a power of nature, it was something acquired. Li Fuchen was only able to create Sword Dao Qi and wasn't able to produce Sword Dao Qi out of nowhere. The Fire Dao Qi in the radius of a few hundred miles gathered into a Qi sphere that was a few miles in size. The Qi sphere had an extremely high temperature and extreme pressure. Some of the fine dust particles were immediately extinguished. I cannot compress it anymore. A few miles was already the limit. If it was any smaller, Li Fuchen wouldn't be able to control it. But at this moment, Li Fuchen had an idea. When the Qi sphere was compressed to an extremely small state, would he be able to throw it out to kill the enemy? It might be possible. When Li Fuchen released his palm, the Qi sphere that was a few miles in size instantly crumbled. A massive amount of Fire Dao Qi burst out and turned the radius of a few dozen miles into ruins. The power only weakened after reaching a few dozen miles. Li Fuchen's heavenly tribulation and his control of the Fire Dao Qi created a huge commotion. A large number of primary Sea Realm monarchs were rushing over. The first group that rushed over was a group of over 20 members. This group didn't have so many members at the start and they only gathered together when they were rushing over. After seeing Li Fuchen, this group of monarchs were overjoyed. They might have over 20 members, but after splitting 5 million mid-grade spirit stones evenly, each of them would have 200,000 mid-grade spirit stones, and it wasn't a small sum. Kill! Under the lead of the 7th level monarch, the monarchs charged at Li Fuchen. Heaven and Earth extermination. Li Fuchen strolled in the air and unsheathed the joint heaven sword before brandishing it. Crackle! The spatial zone seemed to have ruptured and all the monarchs froze. In the next moment, everyone, including the 7th level monarch, had been split into pieces. The Heaven and Earth extermination contained the Void Dao laws. Even though the range was huge, each point was the strongest point and each point could ignore defenses to a certain extent. It didn't matter how many monarchs there were, unless the numbers were multiplied by a few times. After keeping the storage bag, Li Fuchen rushed towards the west. Along the way, Li Fuchen encountered several groups of monarchs, but no one was able to block a single sword from Li Fuchen. A single sword was certain death. Now that his Qi cultivation had reached the primary Sea realm, Li Fuchen's strength had increased tremendously. He was like a monster that was at the pinnacle of strength in all aspects. Be it law comprehension or spiritual awareness, they were at the limits of primary Sea realm or even beyond. The joint heaven sword in his hand was a heaven-class artifact sword. Even the weakest cultivation wasn't comparable to regular first-level monarchs. After pushing the Divine Flame Red Rainbow technique to the 35th rank and fusing the Sword Dao Law, his cultivation strength was at least at the 3rd or 4th level of primary Sea realm. Red Soul City, the closest city to the Soul Sky Empire in the Clear Peace County. In the wilderness that was 10,000 miles away from the Red Soul City, Li Fuchen was obstructed by a group of monarchs again. You are truly incredible to be able to escape to this place. But it ends here. The leader of the monarchs was wearing armor and had a terrifying Qi presence. Li Fuchen sized up the monarch and judging from the Qi presence, the monarch was at the 8th level of primary Sea realm and was 1 level higher than the Blue Star Monarch. Extinction Saber Monarch, why are you wasting your breath on him? I, Dongguishan, am willing to capture him for you. One of the 5th level monarchs at the side spoke. Dongguishan was one of the top monarchs of the South Mountain City's Donghua clan. His strength was even stronger than clan head Dongguishan. The Extinction Saber Monarch that he mentioned was one of the top 10 monarchs under the South Sun County Protector, Lin Tianyang. He didn't follow the Extinction Saber Monarch to obtain the reward of 5 million gold coins. He merely wanted to contribute to the county protector and let Lin Tianyang remember the existence of the Donghua clan. All right. Remember, don't kill him. The Extinction Saber Monarch nodded. He still didn't know Li Fuchen's strength and thought that Dongguishan was enough to capture Li Fuchen. Idiot. Li Fuchen took an indifferent glance at Dongguishan. Uneducated kid. Watch how I, Dongguishan, humiliate you. Dongguishan clenched his fists and clasped them together abruptly. In the next moment, boundless heaven and earth chi surged over from all directions and was trying to seal Li Fuchen. I don't have the time to waste on you, so die. Li Fuchen drew the joint heaven sword and brandished it. The surging heaven and earth chi lost its gravity and collapsed. In an instant, apart from the extinction saber monarch, all the other monarchs had shattered. Impossible. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.